Good morning and welcome. Thank you for bearing with us as the joke said. We do appreciate your patience, but we are, after all, out here on the Hudson Bay, the shores of the Hudson Bay. The fact that we have internet is pretty remarkable, right, team? So we're really excited to be joining with you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is polar bear season here in Churchill, Manitoba, Canada, and that means we have polar bears to our left. We've got them to our right. They're behind us, and we know you want to see them. In fact, you can see them. There's one sleeping right now. That is a live feed of a polar bear, and we are so excited that you're here to watch those with us. So again, we're live from Tundra Buggy 1. My name's Kyle Shutt with Discovery Education. We are so thrilled to be partnering with Polar Bears International again for the Tundra Connections webcast. We have so much fun stuff in store. We've got a fantastic panel. And you know what, guys? I don't know if you can hear this, but there are lots of kids out there watching. Do we have any kindergarten students? Raise your hand. Kindergartners? Yeah, you see a lot of hands out there? Okay. First graders? Any first graders in the house, maybe? All right. That was pretty good. I wonder if the second graders can be louder. Do you think there's some second graders? Second graders, go ahead. Let's hear you. Well, that's pretty loud. That's pretty good. Okay. So we know that we have all ages, but we are talking about Arctic ABCs this morning. We've got a lot of great stuff to share with you. We're going to walk through animals, creatures, things about the Arctic, and this whole region, this polar region that's so fascinating, and talk about polar bears. Before we begin, we want you to know how to interact with us. So you might be watching this in a couple locations. You might be watching it, if you're an old hat, you've joined us before on the Polar Bears International Tundra Connections website. If you're doing so, we really encourage you. Submit those questions in the chat room there. We will pull those and ask and answer as many as we can. Of course, you can always use Tundra Connections on Twitter, the hashtag Tundra Connections, or tweet to @PBears or @DiscoveryEd, and we will get back to you as quickly. I'm sorry, @PolarBears and @DiscoveryEd. We will get back to you as quickly as possible. And if you're watching this on the Discovery Education page, we have heard that perhaps you need to click that extra link to get out to Ustream, but there is a question, submit a question button there. If you click that, you can send us an email. Email questions@pbears.org. So lots of ways that you can funnel those questions to us, and we'll answer as many as we can, right, team?
Absolutely.
All right, so speaking of the team, Julian, why don't you get us started? You've been here many times. Please share a
Yeah,
little
I
bit
think
about
this
yourself.
is like my 10th or 11th year. So I'm director of the Tundra Connections program along with Elisa, who's sitting here with us too. And so we're with Polar Bears International. We're so excited to be here. If you see behind me, you can kind of see those buggies out there. Those are Tundra Buggies. And the reason they're gathering around here right now is because there are so many bears out here right now. They've been out there sparring. We've had a mother and his it's her little baby, her cub, walking around. It's been really fun watching them this morning. So we're glad you're here. We're going to talk to you about polar bears and the tundra. If you've never seen a picture of the tundra, how many of you have been to the ocean and to the beach? It looks like the beach, except instead of sand, it is ice and snow and rocks and things like that. And then we still see some water out the window, too, from the Hudson Bay. So I'll let the others introduce themselves to you, but glad you're here.
Thanks, Shalene. Hi, everybody. My name is Flavio Lehner. I'm a postdoctoral researcher focusing on climate change and the climate system as a whole. I work in Colorado, and this is really my first time up here, which is extremely exciting. We've already seen a bunch of bears, and this is just a fantastic experience, and I hope we get to share as much of our excitement with you guys today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Thea Beckschaft. I am a polar bear researcher, and I have worked with the bears here in Canada, of course, but also the bears in Greenland. And I am very excited to hear all the questions you have about polar bears and about the Arctic.
Well, Tia, let's start with you because we already have some questions coming in. In fact, Beaufort County School District, hi guys, thanks for joining. They wanted to know, how do you get a job working with polar bears?
How do you get a job working with polar bears? Well, first of all, you stay in school, and you stay in school for quite a while. So you finish high school, and then you go on to university. You become a biologist, and then you take all the courses you can on anything Arctic. And then after that, when you have to do your master thesis and then maybe your PhD, you can continue working on polar bears if there's a project available and a supervisor available who's willing to teach you.
Perfect. Thank
So
you.
it sounds easy, but it takes a while.
But it's a perfect transition because you mentioned starting with Arctic. And we are, after all, going to go through the letters of the alphabet, right? That's Arctic ABCs. That's our broadcast. That's our theme. And we're going to teach you a few new words. And A is for Arctic or Antarctic, right, Julene?
Exactly. And so a lot of people get confused. They think that the polar bears live with the penguins, but actually live on two different ends of the Earth. So on the North Pole area, that's the Arctic, and we're in the subarctic, which is partway up to the North Pole. That's where the bears are, and there are lots of other Arctic animals you'll see us talk about today. And then the penguins are down on the South Pole in Antarctica. So the Antarctic is on the opposite side. So when you see those books you're reading sometimes with the bears and the penguins in one place, you can go, this is such a great story. I love that these animals all live on the snow, but we do know that they live on different parts of the Earth.
Very cool. Now we have a sound, I think, here to guess the next animal. So you guys are going to have to listen really closely. We might play it more than once, too. Let's go ahead and listen to this sound. See if you can guess what our next word is for the letter B. Did you hear that? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Any guesses out there? What do we think it is? Let's go to our next letter B and find out. Flavio, you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, I hope lots of you got that right, even though it was pretty hard. When I heard it first, I wasn't sure. But it was the Beluga Whale. Yeah, a fairly big and common whale in the Arctic, which you see on the pictures that we put up, has a lot of sort of fat and blubber. And we'll probably hear a lot about the role blubber and fat plays for animals in the Arctic as we go through the ABC, because after all, the blubber is really something important to keep a lot of animals warm up here. So yeah, this was our letter B.
Perfect. And of course, it's winter. You just saw a polar bear right outside. We have these live cams showing you as they're kind of lounging around. And that's why we're here right now, to study the polar bears. That's why you see the Tundra Buggies driving by. There are people that visited, that paid money to come see these magnificent creatures, just like that one you're seeing right now. But of course, in the summertime, right, Julian? This is the time where you come to see belugas, right? So belugas you can see in the Churchill River there by the thousands.
Yeah, they're migrating up to get ready to have their babies. So, yeah. So it's really fun. This is a great tourist area because in the summer you have beautiful flowers and lichen and plants on the tundra, and you get to see the belugas. In the winter, you get to see all the wonderful snow and ice, and then the polar bears.
All right, so moving right along here, we're on letter C. Are you with us? I hope that as we go throughout, maybe you're thinking of what your favorite letters are and what your favorite words are that you're hearing throughout this, maybe writing them down. You could take them home tonight. Your parents say, what did you do today? You've got lots and lots to talk about, right? So letter C, of course, is Churchill. That's where we are today. You can see on the slide on the map here that we're way up north, right? Very, very high up north latitude. And of course, caribou, which also are in the tundra and in this region. So that's kind of a neat one. And what we want you to do, of course, as we go through these, are send us your favorite words. Tweet to us at Polar Bears, at Discovery Ed. Use the Tundra Connections hashtag. Tell us, what's your favorite Arctic word, or letter for that matter, that starts your word. So let's go ahead on to D, and I believe we're going to you, Tia.
We are. And
Letter
let's
T.
get it. Letter D.
D.
First of all, it's for dogs and for dog sleds. Now, we're on a Tundra Buggy, and that's one way to get around up here. But if you don't have that, maybe you have dogs, and then you can have a dog sled, which is really cool. But you have to wear a lot of clothes because you're sitting on the sled, and it can get quite cool. D is also for dens, and in polar bears, it's only the pregnant females that den. So you can see on the left here, there's a female just popping her head out of her den that she's been digging in the snow. And while she's in there for a long, long time, for 3 to 6 months. While she's in there, she has her cubs. And you can see twin cubs on the right here, looking at the photographer.
And thank you, Mesner Primary School, who's joining us. They wanted to know, what's the polar bear digging for? Like, why would polar bears dig overall?
Did we just see one digging on the camera?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of looks like one's digging there.
Oh,
and then
right.
I think perhaps,
So the bear that you can see here, it's lying on this black stuff, and that's kelp. so big algae that's washed up from the bay. And the bears like to lie on them, and they also like to chew on them, probably because they're breaking down, and that's called fermentation, because they're kind of rotting, and that creates heat. So maybe it's a nice warm spot to lie.
Very cool. I love it. Continue to send those questions. We have students from San Antonio, Texas joining us. Very cool. I love it. We have students really from all across that continue to share and post those questions. So please, we love it when you do that. Continue to do so. Let's keep rolling right along here for letter E. This is an important one. Right, team?
I agree.
It's why we're here.
Yeah, we picked E standing for Earth, which is our planet that we're all on. No matter if you're in San Antonio or up here in Tundra, in Churchill, this is all this very same planet. And whatever is happening on this planet might very well affect a lot of us. So one of the places that is changing very rapidly in the last couple of decades is the tundra. But we will probably later talk about connections of the Arctic, of the tundra to places in the US and what all of these changes of climate and other things mean across this one planet that we have.
Perfect. And so as we shift to our next letter, which is letter F, we have another sound file, okay? I think you guys like that one. So let's listen to another one. See if you can identify what word or what animal might be associated with this sound for letter F. Let's hear that one more time. All right, Julene, do you want to go ahead and take it away? What is our letter F?
All right, raise your hand if you think you know it. When you're called on, tell them what you think it is. If you think that's right, raise your hand, because I guess you already see it now. It's the Arctic fox. And notice how it's one color on the left and white on the right. And that's because of camouflage. So camouflage is where they try to blend into their environment so people can't see them. So their predators don't see them and won't hurt them. And their prey, the animals they eat, won't see them coming when they get ready to eat them. So that's the Arctic fox. In the summer, it is brown or gray, brownish gray, and in the winter, it turns white to blend in with the snow.
Yeah, we talk a lot about animal adaptations, right? That's a pretty neat one for them to be able to survive here. So, Tia, go ahead. I think you're going to take us through letters G and H.
I am. And so I think we've mentioned it quite a few times that right now we're in Canada.
Oh, let's pause. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have got to... What is going on? Can you tell us? Look at that. This is happening right now. This is live. Look at those bears.
Yeah, those are two males that are play fighting. So they're not trying to really injure each other. They're having fun, and they're practicing for the mating season when they really will start fighting. But that's in the spring and not right now. So you can see it kind of looks like when you're wrestling with a good friend. It's all in good fun.
That is so cool. Just take a look and watch them play and interact. And Tia, you were mentioning a little bit earlier the social behaviors of polar bears as you study them. Do we know why bears do this kind of thing? And especially at this time of year, you would think that they're very hungry, right? They haven't eaten in several months.
They're very hungry. Most of them have been on land and not eating for about 4 months. So for a lot of them, being here is all about lying still as much as you can and sleeping and just saving up all that energy until the ice comes back and the seals and the food. But for some reason, the males do this quite a lot, the play fighting, when they're here. Look at that. It's really impressive to look at. Yeah, and it looks like they're really going at it, but they'll get a few nicks and scrapes, but it's usually not worse than that. But so the theory is either that they're bored and this is fun, or that they're training their muscles to be ready for spring, or that they're simply learning to fight, because it's often the younger males that will initiate this fighting.
And we are not making this up, everyone. I mean, that's over my left shoulder here. Like, this is happening real time. I don't even know if the camera will pick it up, but it's right over my left shoulder. It's pretty incredible. Yeah. So really, really cool that you get to see these polar bears just kind of hanging out here and they're waiting for that ice to form. So speaking of ice, though, let's go back to letter G, Tia.
Yeah, no, what I was saying before was that now we've mentioned quite a few times that we are in Canada. And Canada does have most of the world's polar bears, but actually they're found all the way all around the Arctic. So we have them in Greenland, the world's biggest island, which we'll zoom in on here on the right. We have them in Canada. We have them in Alaska. We have them all along the coast in Russia. And we have them in Svalbard, which is a Norwegian island in the high Arctic. Actually, you can see Svalbard right there on the top, in the top corner.
This is incredible, just watching them play like that. That's pretty cool. All right, should we move on to letter H? What do you think, Tia?
Yeah, I'm
All
ready.
right.
Letter H is for hare. And actually, here you can see, yeah, hare and hare. So let's start with the hare. The Arctic hare also has two different colors, and that's the same reason that Julene was talking about before with the fox. It's also for camouflage. So they'll be brown when the tundra is nice and brown, and they'll be white when there's snow. Well, actually they'll turn white even when there's no snow, and then it doesn't work very well, because then they really stand out and they're very easy to see and to catch. But they turn white because they're hoping for snow and to be able to hide. So polar bears have two different kinds of hair. They have long hair, that's about 10 centimeters. And then they have shorter hair, that's about 5 centimeters. And so the top coat, the long ones, are kind of like a rain jacket. So they protect the bear against, like, when it's scraping up against snow and ice, or if it's raining. So that's like your rain jacket. And then the woolly hair that they have underneath is a lot warmer. So that's like your sweater that you put on under your rain jacket on a cold day. Oh yeah,
And
we
have
have
an example right here. Flavio's kind of holding it up there.
Are we on? Yeah. Maybe you can separate it a little bit and you can have a look. See, so what you're holding up here is the long hair. I think we also have a picture of it on the slide. Here is the long hair, and then if you want to see the woolen hair, you kind of have to dig a little. See this? Right here, a little bit. It's hard to separate like this, but can we show the slide again? There you can see, this is a picture I did in my office earlier this year. So here you can see the difference because I separated them. So you have the guard hair, the long rain jacket on the left, and then you have the woolly, warmer undercoat on the right.
And of course, H could be for Hudson Bay, right? Which is just out these windows as well.
Exactly.
All right, so moving right along, we're going to go into our next section, and then we'll go back to some questions. So, Julene, Inuit is for I.
I is for Inuit, you
Or I
mean?
is for Inuit, correct.
Yeah. So I is for Inuit, and it's also, which is also a word that starts with I, is also the Indigenous people or Indigenous. So when we're talking about Indigenous, we're talking people who are native to the area that we're in, and the people who lived here long before we ever showed up. The Indigenous people are the Inuit. So you'll see them there, but they're very modern in the things they do. They're just like you and I are. They just have this great, amazing heritage as well.
All right, let's take a pause. I want you, if you're watching with us, just take 10 seconds. If you need to write it down, that's fine. What's been your favorite word so far? You can whisper it to a partner. You can write it down, your choice. What's your favorite word that we've learned so far? Because we still have a few to go. All right, I want to see those as you share those with us in the chat room. Please go ahead and post those to us. But let's keep moving. Flavio, letter J. What is letter J? What's our word?
Our word for letter J is January, like the month, the first month of the year. And the reason that this is an important month in context of what we're talking about here is it's the month where most of the polar bear cubs are being born. So after the mothers dig their den and have their cubs, stays in her den, and then in January those cubs are typically born. So that's an important month to keep track of the young polar bears that are out here and that we observe to keep track of how their population changes.
Thank you. And so also letter K here. can you tell us what is letter K?
Yeah, for letter K, we picked something that, to be honest, I didn't know the word before. I came up here and learned a lot about the tundra. It's kamik, and these are these boots that you can see here, and traditionally they're made out of the skin of either reindeer or seals. So they're really very traditional boots that you do from the things that you find up here in the Arctic when you hunt to survive. You're trying to use as much of nature as you can. You're not going to let anything go to waste. And so these boots are a perfect example of how to make use of the resources of the tundra and being thoughtful about that.
Yeah, and I also love that you admit that, because we want the students to know we're always learning. We're up here to learn, right? We might be sharing with you and teaching you, but we're also learning from one another. That's
Absolutely,
something we
yeah.
continue to hear as we go throughout the couple days here, how you guys are able to talk with one another and teach each other as well.
Yeah,
So,
really. This is a special place for all of us to be and learn about the planet and cultures up here. It's fascinating.
cool. Let's move on to letter L. Tia?
Yep. So the letter L. Now, we talk a lot about polar bears, and you're also looking at a polar bear right now, but there are actually a lot of birds up here too, especially during the summer, but we also have a few ones now. So one of the ones is called a loon. You can see it here on the right side, an Arctic loon. And apart from that, we also have very tiny mammals. We have the big mammals that are the polar bears, but we also have tiny mammals. And this is a lemming. It kind of looks like a mouse. And lemmings are incredibly important for the whole ecosystem up here, because usually there's a lot of them, and they're a very important food source for the snowy owls, for example, but also for the foxes.
Very cool. Let's take some questions. We're getting some great tweets coming in. Mrs. Morgan's class, thank you for sharing your photos. We love to see what your viewing experience looks like in your classroom. Take those photos, send them on to us, Tundra Connections or at Polar Bears and at Discovery Ed. Mrs. Unro's class, I believe we answered how we knew whether the polar bears were playing or not, but overall they're not trying to harm one another, and I think that's the key right there, that we know that they're just playing. We have a lot of other questions coming in, so this is somewhat thoughtful and a little bit serious question. At Redbridge Elementary wanted to know, how close is the polar bear to extinction?
Well, I'd say it's a tricky question, because it's very hard to put a deadline on something like that. But I would say that the best answer I can come up with is that it depends on what we do. It really is up to us. If we do nothing, or if we continue to pollute like we are now, it's going to be very soon. If we wise up and we pollute less, we start being more eco-friendly, do a lot more green stuff, don't put CO2 out in the air as we are now, then we will have polar bears for many, many hundreds and thousands of years.
And the good news is there's something we can do. In fact, I'm probably going to jump ahead on our ABC chart, but it's just appropriate. Julian, can you talk to us a little bit about Project Polar Bear? Because that's something that all the classes can participate in.
Right. So if you go on Polar Bear International's website, you can look for Project Polar Bear, and you can submit different project ideas. So you can think of things that you can do. And so one of the things you want to do is take action. You may not be able to do anything right now to come out here in the tundra. You may not be able to come out here and do anything specifically. And you think, well, wherever I live in my part of the world, what can I do to help? But there are things you can do to help. And sometimes the youngest of us are the ones that are the best at doing that. So you can make your world better and save the polar bears by doing things like turning off the lights. When you leave a room, turn off the lights. When you're leaving a room, turn off the TV. Turn off the water when you're brushing your teeth, and then only turn it back on when you're ready to rinse your mouth again. So there are lots of things you can do. And if you come up with a project that you can do with your fellow students, you can join the Project Polar Bear Contest. And you can learn more about that on Polar Bears International's website, pbears.org.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Those bears look like they're maybe getting a little tired laying down here, and that means we need to keep moving, guys. We've got a lot of letters to cover, so let's keep cruising. We will continue to get questions here before the end of the program, I promise, so keep submitting. But we're at letter M, and Julian, that's for Manitoba, right?
It is from Manitoba, and you're probably wondering what Manitoba is or where it is. Well, some of you may be in Canada, and you're going, I know exactly where that is. But some of you may be in North America and the United States. So if you look at the United States, that's a big part of North America, but Canada is above us and stretches from all the way to the left, all the way to the right on that map. And it's divided up just like our United States are divided up, only they're divided up into provinces. And Churchill is in Manitoba, so that's where we are today.
Very cool. Moving into letter N, the narwhal.
The narwhal. It's a gnarly looking animal, isn't it? So that's actually a tusk coming off one of its teeth. Isn't that crazy? It's a whale that lives in the water, and it has this tusk that comes off its teeth and sticks straight out like that. So that's what the narwhal looks like. They're not something you're going to see swimming around a lot, but they are definitely out there and a very interesting animal.
Very cool. Let's move on to letter O. Flavio?
Yeah, for O we have on the one hand the ocean, since we're like right next to it, as you could have seen, as you've seen on some of the live pictures that you saw before. The polar bears are fighting really at the beach and digging up the kelp that has washed up at the shore.
Hold on, sorry to interrupt. This guy's walking right next to our buggy. You can see the buggy in the right-hand side of
Wow.
the shot. He is right next to us. He's just kind of sniffing around, wondering what's going on. But when we say we're live and we're close to these polar bears, we are close.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you also see that this polar bear that we see here in the live stream is kind of dirty. It's not your typical textbook white polar bear. And the reason for that is that they've been out here a while and there hasn't been any snow, and they've been digging to keep themselves busy looking for kelp. And this guy in particular, while we were talking about the letters up to this letter O, he was really digging next door in the mud. So he's really dirty, like a lot of his fellows at this time of year.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And also, we had the snowy owl, right?
Indeed, yeah. We thought that we want to show you the snowy owl, the owl as a letter, as an animal for the letter O. A very fascinating bird that we're still hoping to see. Today we got a glimpse of it yesterday evening. And
Also, I'm sure a lot of you know the snowy owl from Harry Potter, because Hedwig is a snowy owl.
exactly, yeah, definitely a famous animal at this point.
Okay, so as we move into letter P, it might seem obvious what it is, right? But we have an audio file again to listen, to hear what this animal is, and it's not a polar bear, let me tell you that.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and listen to this sound. So again, listen real closely. It's not a polar bear. What do you think it is? All right, any guesses out there? What do we think? What is it? Go ahead with letter P.
I'm really impressed if anyone has a good guess for that.
So letter P was a...
Ptarmigan. And even though it doesn't sound, when you say ptarmigan, it sounds like it starts with a T, but really it does start with a P.
I think that's why that's one of my favorite words, probably my favorite word on this list. Because
But
again,
it's like
one of those...
pterodactyl. Like the flying dinosaurs, they actually, even though you say them pterodactyl, they sound like they start with a T, they also start with a P. So,
I like those kind of words that they might trip you up, but they're kind of like secret words, or
Right?
special words that you have to know. Kind of like we had, which the students are probably studying, when you had hair and hair, two different words, sound
Exactly.
the same, two different meanings, right?
Exactly.
Pretty neat.
and
All right.
actually, I just want to say the ptarmigans are super cool because they are so well adapted to living in the high Arctic and places where it's really cold and snowy. So if you ever meet a ptarmigan and it will let you, you should look underneath its feet because it actually even has, I was going to say furry feet, but it has feathers underneath its feet
No kidding.
to stay warm. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that either. All right. Flavio, letter Q. What word are we using there?
Yeah, again, a word that was new for me. We picked the kivyut. Anybody knows what that is? Well, you can see the Arctic Musk Ox coming up here. And the kivyut is the underwool of that animal, which is a very fascinating material that has a lot of properties that humans really value. It's very soft, it's very warm, and it makes a lot of sense to have this kind of material on you if you hang out up here in the tundra like these animals do all year. So this is their protection against the cold, and a very, very impressive way nature protects those animals. Then we're going, I think, right to letter R, a very important letter, and maybe my favorite letter and word that goes along with it. It's the ringed seal, a widespread seal type that we see a lot up here in the Arctic, and it's so important for the ecosystem, not only because it's very important for the polar bear, because it's one of his main food sources. It's a very fatty animal, and as we've heard earlier from our experts, the polar bears really need the fat when they hunt those animals. They need the fat to get through the harsh winters up here.
That's what they're waiting for, right? That's why they're here right now, for this
Yeah,
polar bear
exactly.
migration. All right, and letter S.
And that brings us right to letter S, which is a nice segue. We picked for letter S, on the one hand, sparring, which we've actually seen live
Pretty
here.
amazing. We took these pictures because we
Absolutely.
didn't think you can't count on seeing polar bear
Yeah.
sparring, and then we got to see it. Pretty cool.
Yeah, so you see here again some polar bears sparring. And the other word that we picked that is important for polar bears is sea ice. As you can see here, it's what happens when the ocean surface starts to get really cold and starts to freeze up. And this is a key platform for the polar bears to hunt the exact seal that we saw before, the ringed seal, to hunt on. So that's really what the polar bears are here for. They're waiting for the ocean to freeze up, and so they can go hunt the seals.
All right, Tia, take us to letter T.
I will. Let's see.
So we have the tundra, of course, which is outside.
We have the tundra, which is where
What
we
we're
are,
talking
and you've
about.
already seen pictures of it. And then we have polar bear teeth. Polar bears are perfectly adapted to living up here in so many different ways, but also their teeth are perfect for grabbing seals out of the seals' breathing holes, dragging them up onto the ice, and eating all that, stripping off the skin and eating all that blubber that Flavio was talking about before. And T is also for the Arctic tern, which is a bird that you find up here during the summer. And if you remember, Julene was talking about the Arctic and the Antarctic and how they're on two opposite sides of the Earth. And actually, this tern, this relatively small bird, flies all the way from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back every year. It's a very impressive feat.
Let's keep cruising along to letter U.
Yes. Letter U is for an ulu, which is a traditional knife tool that people living in the Arctic have used. And it's so versatile. You can use it for anything. You can use it if you get a seal. You can use it to cut it open and to cut the pieces of meat that you like. Then, of course, you have the seal skin. You want to make that nice so you can use it for your clothing, for example. And you can also clean that with the ulu on the back. And you can even use it to do a haircut on your friend if you want to. I don't recommend that you do that. But if you have nowhere else to go, if you don't have a hairdresser or your mom to do your hair, then you could use the ulu.
Great. Well, we'll take a few more questions here, and we'll say hello to a bunch of classes that are joining us for sure. We also have James Madison Primary School in Edison, New Jersey that's joining us, Messenger Primary School in Afton, Missouri. We have Kansas City, Missouri with Redbridge Elementary joining us as well. Thank you so much. And a surprise this morning, but very excited to see that Willow Creek Elementary School is here. Hi, guys. Willow Creek, actually, my cooperating teacher a long time ago, Mr. Chrisman, that's his class, and I used to work with him. So hi, Mr. Chrisman, and hello to all the students out there that are watching, and thank you for joining. And they wanted to know, how do you get to Churchill, Canada? And to be honest, it takes a little bit of time, right? It took me
does.
4 different airplanes to fly here over the course of 2 days. And then, of course, to get out here, actually on the tundra, we're in these Tundra Buggies, which you've seen kind of driving by. And that's what we're in right now, is really like a roving TV studio that's on a big school bus with monster truck tires. There it is. That's Buggy 1. We're sitting inside of that right now. And so that's how we drive around, with these big monster truck tires, and drive everywhere, get over the ice and the snow and, of course, the rocks and things. So kind of neat and pretty interesting. Yeah, there's no roads, not at all. We've got to kind of make our own roads. And so, of course, there are paths for the buggies to stay on. But it's pretty fascinating. So Thank you so much for all of these questions coming in. Let's keep cruising along. We're on the home stretch here, and then we're going to wrap this broadcast up. We're at letter V, right? We were just talking about this at once, so we'll cruise right on past it, but that is vehicle, as in the Tundra Buggy, which we were just chatting about, right? Let's move on to letter W, though, for weather or walrus, right, Flavio?
Exactly, yeah. So we picked the walrus as yet another animal that you can find in the Arctic, and that, yeah, also is very fatty, as you know. So again, this is coming all back to the blubber that plays an important role up here to keep those animals warm. And the other word we picked was weather, as mentioned. And the weather up here is really, it's really something. Today, it's actually quite sunny, but even if you try to do a weather forecast for the next day, it can change very fast. It's a very, very dynamic weather system up here, and can change from one day to the next.
That's also why we wear these nice big blue coats, right? And thanks to the partners, Canada
Absolutely,
Goose,
yeah.
as they already saw, for providing them, and they keep us nice and warm as well. So, Julene, letter X, take us through to the end here.
All right, so letter X is xylem. So if you think about your body and how blood moves through your body in veins and arteries, this is kind of what it is in a plant, only it's xylem tissues or cells that the fluid in the plant is traveling through. So you can kind of almost get an idea of it on the bottom of that plant leaf a little bit. And if you've ever done an experiment, I don't know if you've done this, but it might be one you might want to try. You take some celery, you put it in a glass of water with red food coloring, and then maybe you put another stalk of celery in a glass with another food coloring, and they'll sort of start turning colors. And that's the xylem that's transferring the liquid through that plant or through that tree. So we have very few trees out here right where we are in the tundra. There aren't a lot of trees, but there are trees around, although some of them are kind of just one-sided from the wind blowing on them, and they have the tissue that is known as xylem. So the last two ones are really important because we really believe that it's important that all of us do our part to take care of our planet. So Polar Bears International has made great partnerships. We talked about Project Polar Bear, and it's our youth that can really make a difference, and that's you. You are the youth. So if you look at this, these are some of the kids who've participated in the Project Polar Bear contest and the activities. I mean, there are lots of things you can do. You can plant trees. You can work in your communities. Lots of ways that you can make a difference, even with little things like turning off the lights. So when you leave the classroom today to go to lunch, turn off the light. Or when you leave to go to recess, turn off the light. Make sure you're saving energy and doing all you can. One of the winners was a no idle zone. So when the parents were in carpool lines to pick up their children, they talk them into turning off their cars. And that just helps conserve energy, conserve fuel, and stop the CO2 emissions, the gases that can cause problems. And the last letter is zoos. How many of you go to the zoo? Well, I'm from Memphis. We have an amazing zoo in Memphis, and we have some amazing polar bears there. So there's lots of great work being done at the zoos with polar bear research. It's a great way for you to see the bears, but it's also a great way to get involved. So when you were talking earlier about how do you become a polar bear expert or how do you get a job as a polar bear, I've been taking my granddaughter to the zoo since she was about 2 years old for International Polar Bear Day, and we go and we volunteer. So lots of things you can do to volunteer on the tundra. At the zoo, and get to where you too can have a job someday and be out here on the tundra. So get involved with your zoos. They're doing great work, and do some volunteer work and see what you can do to make a difference.
Wonderful. And we're about near the end of our show here, but we're going to do a rapid fire series of questions so we can get through lots of these, okay? So, at Patty Subrizi wanted to know, how long do the cubs stay in the den? Tia, can you take that one?
Oops. Yeah. Oh, hang on. I'm catching Flavio here. Generally, the cubs will, from they're born till they actually come out of the den, it's going to be around 3 months. So when they come out, they're about this size and about 10 kilos or so.
Wow.
You can convert that if you want.
Okay. Yeah. San Antonio would like to know
20 pounds.
How would a polar bear adapt to warmer climate?
Well, they can't really adapt. They can lie down, and that prevents them from overheating. But the really important part here is that, like you said before, the seals are on the sea ice. And polar bears hunt seals from the sea ice. If there's only open water, we won't have any polar bears because open water, you'll still have some seals and some fish and other animals swimming around in there, but polar bears can't hunt in open water. They need this platform to hunt from. They need the sea ice.
Okay. Mrs. Baxter's grade 1-2 wanted to know, are polar bears fast runners?
They actually are quite fast on a short distance. So don't ever try to outrun a polar bear because you can't. You just cannot. They're way too fast. That's also why
up here, right?
that's why we're up here. But that's also why if the seals are lying on the ice near the breathing hole, that actually the bear will sneak up on them, and then for the final dash, it's going to run for the seal, right? And try to catch it before it gets into the breathing hole again.
That makes sense. Okay. I like this question from Beaufort County School District, or it might be Beaufort. I know there's Beaufort and Beaufort. I don't know which one we're talking. I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. But are you near any schools in Churchill? And yes, there are, right, Julian? There's a school right down inside the town of Churchill. Can you describe it a little?
Yeah, so what's really cool, they have this community compound that they have in Churchill, and inside, can you imagine your school having a bowling alley and an ice skating rink and, you know, all kinds of cool stuff like a movie theater, everything right there in one place. So there is a school, it's a fabulous school, and they're in this great big building because when it gets really, really cold here, where we are today, it's like if you go snow skiing, it's right around freezing, a little bit below. But when it gets really, really cold here in another month or two, they don't want to be outside too much. So everything's pretty much contained in one large building.
Well, thank you so much to our panel for sharing all of your information and taking the time to share with the students. Students, we hope that you've really enjoyed this. Seeing live polar bears right outside, you saw sparring today. Hopefully you learned a new word or two. Expand that vocabulary, right? And also practice on some of that phonemic awareness, on all the great stuff that your teachers are working on, of course. And of course, we want to thank many of our partners. Wirecast, for example, is how we can even put this show on. So thank you to our partners there for sure. And of course, we want you to know that there is something you can do. Of course, there's still time to protect the polar bears. That's why we're here right now, to show you them, to show you how precious they are, how amazing they are, to hopefully put you a little bit in awe. But then we want you to go ahead and join. See what you can do in your communities, in your local communities, in the communities at large. And of course, as Julian has already talked about, Project Polar Bear is just a great way that you can get started with that. So we'd recommend that you check out that Tundra Connections website. And teachers, if you're looking for strategies, if you're going to play this back, of course, we have a whole lot of, easy for me to say, a whole lot of instructional materials, activities, things for you to do that are right on these pages where you're viewing. So we hope that you will join us. Of course, you can take our survey, and we encourage you to do that because your class could win an adoption or even a free one-to-one connection like we're doing here, but just with your class to answer all of your questions. So that's a pretty cool incentive. We hope you'll give us some feedback. So thank you to everyone that's made this possible. Thank you again, Kyle Shutt from Discovery Education. We can't thank Polar Bears International enough for letting us come here and to share this magnificent creature in this area. We hope you'll join us tomorrow, Tuesday, where we'll be back with another one of our live webcasts, our virtual field trips. And then on Wednesday, we're turning to talk about STEM on the Tundra. So lots more for you to check out, both on the Tundra Connections website and at discoveryeducation.com/events. From Churchill, Manitoba, on the shores of the Hudson Bay, it is polar bear season. We're so happy that you joined us. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.